Welcome to the Restricted Handling Podcast. This is what's been going on in China in the past 24 hours. Hong Kong is still reeling from the Jimmy Lai verdict, but today we're seeing the diplomatic fallout hit full throttle. Lai, the 78-year-old founder of Apple Daily, was convicted earlier this week for colluding with foreign forces and sedition. We talked yesterday about how that verdict shredded what was left of Hong Kong's legal independence. Now the aftershocks are global. Beijing's doubling down, saying the conviction closes the chapter on foreign interference. The Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office even called Lai a running dog for the West, a phrase so Cold War it might as well come with a black and white propaganda reel. Meanwhile, Trump told reporters he personally raised Lai's case with Xi Jinping again, saying he feels badly for the imprisoned publisher. Xi, predictably, ignored the appeal. The UK and EU have now both summoned Chinese diplomats, and Australia joined them with its own condemnation. Inside Hong Kong, though, it's radio silence. Lai's supporters are preparing for sentencing next month, bracing for life imprisonment. His old colleagues at Pulse HK in Taipei say the case has only strengthened their resolve. Translation: Beijing's attempt to bury Lai is turning him into a symbol far bigger than they planned. And speaking of symbols, China's showing off its muscle at sea again. Yesterday, we covered how the Liaoning carrier wrapped up drills near Okinawa after those tense radar incidents with Japan's F-15Js. Today, we've got confirmation that China's newest supercarrier, the Fujian, made a high-profile transit through the Taiwan Strait. This marks the ship's first major move since its commissioning last month. Taiwan tracked the vessel closely, noting that 23 Chinese warplanes, including nuclear-capable H-6K bombers, were in the air at the same time. Taiwan's defense minister, Wellington Koo, said it appeared to be heading home for post-deployment maintenance, but the timing is unmistakable. Beijing wanted that crossing splashed across every radar screen in Taipei. Japan's still fuming over last week's close encounters. Tokyo said it's sending formal notice to Beijing, demanding an explanation for the radar lock-ons, while China insists the Japanese planes provoked the incident. If that sounds familiar, it's because we've heard this script before. Beijing causes the scare, then blames the other guy for being startled. To add another layer, U.S. and Japanese naval forces are now running joint tracking operations across the East China Sea. The Pentagon calls it routine coordination. Everyone else calls it a message. Down in the South China Sea, the standoff we've been tracking between China and the Philippines just keeps escalating. Remember how Chinese Coast Guard ships cut Filipino anchor lines and blasted fishing boats with water cannons near Sabina Shoal? Manila has now released time-stamped drone footage of the attack. It's not ambiguous. Small wooden fishing boats getting slammed by high-pressure jets while Chinese megaships stand off at point-blank range. The Philippines' defense secretary called it state-sponsored piracy. Beijing's defense ministry immediately countered that Filipino vessels illegally intruded into Chinese waters. The U.S. reaffirmed that any armed attack on Philippine public vessels would invoke the Mutual Defense Treaty. That's a diplomatic way of saying, this could become a shooting war if someone sneezes wrong. And here's the kicker. While that confrontation was playing out, China's foreign ministry blasted Japan again for distorting facts about an earlier maritime clash. You almost get the sense Beijing's running out of ways to pick fights and has started recycling old ones. Meanwhile, the U.S. and the Philippines are moving full steam ahead on hardening that new base in the Panay Islands just north of Luzon. The Mahatao Forward Operating Base, remember that from earlier this week, is now getting infrastructure upgrades that analysts say could support both BrahMos and MMSS anti-ship missiles. Satellite photos show helipads, docks, and what look like storage bunkers taking shape fast. The location gives the U.S. and its allies direct coverage over the Luzon Strait, the narrow corridor Chinese naval forces must pass through to reach the open Pacific. Beijing's been warning that any missile deployments there would be acts of self-destruction. The base's construction crews don't seem too concerned. Up north, Japan's been dealing with another diplomatic headache. After Prime Minister Sanai Takaichi said last month that a Chinese blockade of Taiwan could trigger a joint military response, Beijing's reaction just got nastier. Yesterday, China announced sanctions on retired Japanese defense chief Shigeru Iwasaki, accusing him of colluding with Taiwan separatists. The sanctions block him from entering China or doing business there. Symbolic, but pointed. Japan's chief cabinet secretary said it's unacceptable political pressure, while Taiwan's representative in Tokyo dryly noted that any Chinese retaliation would hurt China as much as Japan, especially since Japan supplies roughly half the global market for semiconductor materials. If China decides to escalate further, it could be like cutting off its own oxygen line. And speaking of cutting lines, China's got another big play underway on the global economic front. The long-discussed Russia-China Far Eastern gas pipeline is officially under construction, connecting Russia's Pacific coast to northeastern China. Deliveries are set to start in 2027, starting small at 2 billion cubic meters and scaling up to 12 billion. It's a major lifeline for Moscow's sanctioned economy and a big win for Beijing's energy security. China's ambassador in Moscow called progress steady, which is diplomatic code for "we're doing this no matter what the West thinks." Over in Panama, that high-stakes ports deal we mentioned yesterday is now in limbo. Beijing's insisting that its state-owned shipping giant COSCO get majority control in the BlackRock Mediterranean shipping purchase of 40-plus ports, including 2 at the Panama Canal. The White House isn't budging, saying Chinese control of the canal would violate the U.S. Panama Treaty and threaten American supply chains. People familiar with the talks say the deal's at an intractable impasse. Hutchison still owns the ports, and Beijing's trying to use them as leverage in broader trade negotiations. It's another example of China mixing business, power, and politics like it's one big cocktail. Now let's talk cyber. New analysis of China's Ministry of State Security has surfaced, showing how provincial intelligence bureaus run their own hacking operations tied to local industries. The Hainan Bureau manages maritime and defense espionage across Southeast Asia. The Jiangsu Bureau handles aerospace targets, particularly those connected to the Comac C919 jet program. Think of it like China's cyber version of federalism. Each province runs its own shop but feeds data to the center. It's efficient, decentralized, and deeply woven into China's industrial policy. At the same time, the MSS is still warning parents that foreign spies are using anime and online games to erode youth values. That campaign, which started earlier this week, is turning into full-blown hysteria. State outlets now claim Western agencies are embedding subliminal messages in animation and gaming communities to promote historical nihilism. The government's response? More censorship, more surveillance, more patriotic education. If you're keeping score, that means the world's biggest authoritarian regime is officially scared of cartoons. And while Beijing obsesses over cartoons, its military keeps flexing. The CH-7 stealth drone we mentioned a few days ago has entered extended flight testing after a successful maiden run. The aircraft can stay airborne for 16 hours at over 50,000 feet, designed for reconnaissance and electronic warfare. State media says foreign buyers are already interested. Meanwhile, the Liaoning Carrier Group is back in port, wrapping up what Japan called one of China's most aggressive peacetime deployments. But underneath all that shiny new tech, the People's Liberation Armies still got human problems. Reports from inside the force describe chronic morale issues, limited career paths, and heavy political oversight. Soldiers complain of long deployments, no phones, and rigid censorship of social media. Veterans continue to protest unpaid pensions, even as Xi Jinping's government promises reforms. It's the same paradox we keep coming back to: world-class hardware, 20th century management. Thanks for being a part of the RH community. Subscribe, leave a positive comment or 5-star review, and most importantly, help build our network by sharing this.